Hello, and welcome to another episode of Indie Thinking here on Indie Agency News. I am Kyle O'Brien, managing editor of Indie Agency News, and today we're talking bots, but we're talking bots in a little more friendly manner. We're talking bot-friendly branding with Territorial. So let's not go any further until we bring them on the stage. We have Robert, Topher, and Idon from Territorial.
Hey,
Thank you so much for joining us, and everybody say hello.
hey, everybody.
Howdy.
Hi.
Thanks for
All
having
right.
us, Kyle.
All right, bot friendly branding. We're going to get to that in just a second, but just remind us again a little bit about who Territorial is, and then we'll go into how you got into bot friendly branding.
Sure, yeah, Territorial. We're a full-service indie ad agency based in New York and Portland. We offer everything across the brand spectrum, from brand identity and brand strategy to campaign work, white space work, research along the way, everything that you'd expect from a full-service agency.
Excellent. All right, well, let's get into it. Here it is. It's bot friendly branding. What well, how did you get into this? And obviously, you made a white paper on it. What was the inspiration behind this, and what in your agency kind of led you to this area?
Yeah. We tend to focus on what we call brand-led growth. So for us, one of the most important things is just helping companies along their journey at strategic points to figure out when investment in brand is going to yield outsized returns for their business. And generative AI is a massive disruptor in any point at which brand kind of like comes to life. And so we found ourselves very early on starting to monkey with generative AI, think about different opportunities. But really swiftly, you start to realize that generative AI poses a massive problem to one of the fundamental things that is super important about brand. Generative AI is really imaginative. It pulls from absolutely everything that it possibly can, but brand needs to be super specific and consistent. So it's the opposite of imaginative in some ways. It needs to be really, really, really limited, really regular. And so from that perspective, we did a webinar on our bot-friendly branding product, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. But we started it off with a little bit of a demonstration. And the demonstration is how swiftly generative AI, when you put your brand in the hands of it, can just absolutely shred your consistency and therefore take off the edge that you really need from a brand perspective.
And I would also say that we wanted to escape the binary that was happening. It was, AI is either going to solve every problem or AI is going to take every job. And we wanted to approach the topic with a little bit more perspicacity and think about what is it that AI can do as a partner for a brand. And so rather than, try to fight, push back against the winds of change, we thought, well, how can we enlist AI as a creative stakeholder?
Gotcha. Okay, so how does that kind of happen? So people look at Gen AI and they think, okay, I have to mold this in some way, I have to make this mine, but they also look at it as a bit of a kind of scary thing to go up against. How do you make them understand that they can not only enter this space well, but and actually master it in some way, shape, or form?
It's a combination of things. I think one is really being really realistic about what AI can do for your brand. And so, for instance, we worked with a brand called Suzy, which is a brand in the consumer research space, and we looked at how they were going to use AI to help them scale, help their team scale, and where AI was going to be really important across their system. So before we even started to get into their rebrand, we looked at, okay, what are the tools that you are likely going to be using, and where are the places that your system, based on the expected uses, are going to benefit the most from AI. So we knew, for instance, that Suzy produces a lot of white papers, and because they're a consumer research company, their content touches almost a limitless number of topics. So they could be working with the soda company one time, they could be working with an education brand another time. And so to create a system that could reference all those different types of worlds, we thought that actually played really perfectly into Gen AI's strength, its superpower, which is sort of the limitlessness of image creation. But what we needed to do was make sure that the system could contain that and still feel like it was Suzy branded. And so it's really about identifying the power of AI and also identifying where your goals as a brand can leverage that power the most, and then create the spaces in the system for AI to really take the forefront.
Gotcha. Okay. Now we're back on the bot friendly branding page. So take me through a little bit of what bot friendly branding is. Tell me what we're looking at right now, Topher.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, backing out a little bit, the challenge that we were talking about with branding is kind of that when you bring Gen AI into it, it can start to bring a lot of inconsistencies. And that's because branding documents are made for human brains. So what we kind of point out with bot-friendly branding is that you really need to start to develop your brand from a polycognitive perspective, meaning human brains need to be able to understand it, robot brains need to be able to understand it. So what that means is that with humans, we're really great at doing a lot of extrapolation from a base set of rules and understanding assumptions. So a human creative brain, you're going to say, here are some basic chunks of the world that we want to live in as a brand. Here are the decisions that we make. And the human brain can kind of iterate within those. Robot brains kind of need the opposite. They need a lot more information and a lot more limitation in order to be able to understand the spaces that they iterate in. Exactly as Robert was just talking about in the example of Suzy, where are the spaces where the bot's imagination can kind of be contained in an appropriate vessel so that it can really iterate excitingly for a brand. So in that world of polycognitive branding, what that tends to mean for us is that when we're designing a brand or going through a brand process, we first need to kind of go step by step, first learning what are the areas that are going to be opportunistic for us to bring a brand in, Gen AI into bringing the brand to life. And then what are the types of tools from a Gen AI perspective that are going to be important to leverage for those? So in an imagery perspective, that often takes the form for us as prompt stacks. So understanding the technologies that a specific company is going to be leveraging, whether that's ChatGPT or Canva or Midjourney, to be able to create things like imagery, and then a universal set of guiding principles that are prompt stacks to say, like, in the example Robert was talking about, if we're making a background, we're going to have a very specific set of requests and then an area where you can kind of plop stuff in that's like, so it would be make these types of illustrations with these types of references, and then you would say about people drinking coffee or about people shopping for bananas or whatever it might be. And so that allows you to start to access the imagination of the generative AI while still staying within the confines of something that's going to be brand safe and brand consistent.
Yeah, and I think a good way to kind of understand the moment we're in and the way in which Territorial approaches it is to think about the shift that happened, let's say, over the last 15, 20 years. Prior to that, your brand guidelines it was presumed that whoever was looking at your brand guidelines was going to be a designer. And so they were very specifically focused on what information does a skilled designer need to apply this brand across all the channels that the brand is going to appear in. And then as tools, digital tools really democratized the ability to create, we started to think about, okay, well, you're not just speaking to designers through your brand guidelines, you're also speaking to people who marketers in general. So brand guidelines became a little bit more easy to understand, a little less technical. They were inclusive of that audience. And now all we're saying is that, it's not just designers, it's not just marketers, it's not even always going to be a human. Sometimes it's going to be a robot that is digesting the information in your brand guidelines. So how do you make sure that you can appeal to all those audiences?
Okay. All right. I think I'm understanding it a little bit. Obviously, this is a pretty complex thing, especially for, a lot of people who have been, raised on the traditional ways of marketing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how do you kind of get them, away from the fear aspect of it and get them to address it? And maybe Adon, you can talk about, the types of partnerships you're exploring and, what it means for the agency in general.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of what Topher and Robert have been talking through is how you can leverage generative AI within your organization. We actually had a guest on our podcast recently who said AI isn't replacing jobs, but people using AI are replacing people who don't. And so a lot of what we're talking about in terms of bot-friendly branding is related to how people can start leveraging it in meaningful ways within their organization. And that can start with the brand and creative team. In the webinar that we were also mentioning a couple months ago, we partnered with an organization called Evertune, and they are responsible for helping brands understand how they are showing up in AI search. We all moved into this world of videos and imagery, and it feels as though there's a little bit of a return back to the words. When you start to hear acronyms like AEO, GEO, I think it's still a little bit up in the air what people are going to move forward with. So those are some of the partnerships that we're starting to expand on, but we're also seeing that there's an elevated opportunity for PR and what they can do in terms of infusing brand thinking into all of the human touch points that they're responsible for bringing to bear for brands. So we're pretty excited. It's a bit of a change in terms of how comprehensive marketing organizations and their partners work together, but with a little bit of this eye to bot-friendly branding, there's really an opportunity for all of us.
Interesting. Kind of elaborate a bit on what it means to PR, because so many people think it, PR in the traditional sense. Let's send out a release and let's send out the latest video. So how can this up the PR game overall?
Yeah, Topher, do you want to dive into that in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, and the reason Idon's tagging me is that actually I started, so I've been in the world of advertising for a really long time, but actually I kind of started in the world of PR. And so I really love the worlds where brand and advertising and PR can kind of shake hands. So I get psyched about stuff like this. It's a great question, Kyle, because for so long, I think especially in the world of kind of like the ascendance of paid over earned in the digital context, we witnessed really early on that like earned reach was something that from a social perspective was really desirable, but soon that earned reach wasn't terribly profitable for Mark Zuckerberg and his shareholders, and so they created and sort of shaped the social worlds and the digital worlds that we live in to be pay to play. And in a lot of times, I think that led, when you looked at marketing models for PR and things like earned in general, to be deprioritized to the detriment of brands. I think there's plenty of case studies to show that brands that continued to focus on things like earned and PR, really punched above their weight in a wide range of industries. So I think that reputation was, unearned and inaccurate, but it's really fascinating to see now that the more technology that we're continue to pump into our digital environments and the way that we interact with information, AI search really, really, and this is something that we learned a lot from Evertune during that webinar that Idon mentioned, AI search really, really gives preference to human feedback. And so things like Reddit reviews, things like reviews on site, things like social chatter, are becoming even more important. And we're even seeing that last week, from Instagram announcing that they're making all of their descriptions searchable as well. And so what you're going to continue to see is that like measurable web that comes from human people is important in search, and then it's also going to be important for the bots that scrape that. And so we're back into this space where word of mouth is crucial, and where kind of human-based feedback is going to feed the engines that surface us the information that we're looking for. So that really puts PR in a really crucial point. And it means that PR is going to have a heavier burden to play when it comes to just brand consistency overall. And that's why we're really excited to continue and double down on partnerships with PR companies, because that's where the brand strategy and creative strategy that goes into advertising is going to be inextricably linked with how those messages come to life in a human context online.
That's a really interesting way of looking at it. Being able to, to marry the human aspect of it with this bot aspect of it, because again, a lot of people see bots and go, okay, well, I have to play to the bots in some way, but this brings a more human aspect to it. What other ways are you kind of melding the old school and the new school when it comes to the bot friendly branding, or in other ways?
Yeah, I mean, your question initially was like, how do we make people feel comfortable with this idea? We're not seeing people who have a lot of discomfort. We're seeing people who are really eager to understand how to use the tools, but they also are people who see their jobs as being, potentially somehow affected by this in the long term. And so one of the ways that we kind of reassure people that what we're looking for is this kind of like polycognitive model, as opposed to just sort of like hand over the keys to the machine, to the robots, is we show up with a designer, like a real human designer who is critical to the process. And we also reaffirm that the process itself is almost the essential ingredient. The way in which we work with our clients really is about being in conversation with them, driving forward towards achieve goals together. We always love to say that we never want to finish a project and they say, well, look at this great thing that the Territorial did for us. We always want to finish a project with everyone saying, look at what we did together. So a lot of it is, increasing that human touch, and making sure that we're leveraging technology to the best we can, but just for the end goal of empowering humans. So, you talk a lot about kind of marrying the old and the new. We want to be sure that we're just, in many ways, it's a bit of a talking therapy over the course of the weeks that we put this project together. Oftentimes we're working with businesses and companies that are quite new. The teams might be new to one another. And so providing a format for them to talk about essential things of their business, like what does their brand stand for? What does it mean? How does it want to show up in the world? Can really be just like a really ameliorative process that just brings everybody together. And so that kind of old school, just talk through it approach with some very sophisticated thinking about where the tools are going to take us in the future is kind of how we're mashing the two together.
That's really interesting. Can you give me like any examples of maybe you don't have to name names, but of brands that you've helped kind of understand this and that have really reaped the benefits of this?
Well, Suzy is an example that we love to talk about because it was a really natural extension of where they were coming from. I'm sure you're familiar, and many of the viewers are going to be familiar too with Matt Britton's company, Matt Britton from Mr. Youth Days. Although Suzy is a digital-first consumer insights company. And so they sprung up from the age that we were just talking about, where social kind of came in and blew out the monodirectional model of advertising and said, this isn't about you driving forward your point. This is about us having a conversation. And Suzy understood that really early on and brought social first tools into consumer research. And so as AI has proliferated, they've been really on the front foot of figuring out how to bring AI into models that help surface human types of insights. And so can we bring in more conversational modalities into our research? Can we be able to synthesize larger levels of human research at a level that can start to get us towards more quantitative, but can contain qualitative type insights? And so because they've been leaning into that, that was actually contained in the brief. And this component of thinking about bot-friendly branding was something we'd been tinkering with on our own. So Suzy kind of really helped us to like pilot this type of engagement because there was a really natural connection between what they were already doing in their POV of how technology needs to assist in surfacing real human interactions with what we were thinking, which is like, you definitely can't hand your logo over to a bot and say like, make me a better one. Because it will be terrible. We know it will be terrible. And that's kind of because AI is like a really, really efficient version of the ghost of our past, right? Like it is a blended version of absolutely everything that's ever been said, which is great. But the whole point of branding and about logos and design systems and creativity in general is that you're doing something new. Like it is definitionally opposed to what AI is created to do. And so AI really, really helps when you're trying to scale something you've already thought of. But if you're asking AI to innovate for you, it's just going to give you the sort of like most middle of the road version of what's been done before.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I can see that. So, you mentioned briefly your podcast. Obviously, this has, this elaborates on it a little more. So you mentioned where people can find your podcast, certainly.
Yeah, you can find our podcast everywhere. We have a YouTube. It's called Strange Coordinates. Our podcast is largely focused where we assign one of us to go on a journey to an explore brand. It might be a common brand that you might have heard of, like New Balance. It might be a brand you know a little less about, like Nordic Track. But we go all over the gamut in terms of brands and dive into their histories and their societal stories and how they really came to be. So it's a bit of a journey. So you're welcome on that expedition with us. We also have an interview series called Stranger Coordinates, where we talk to interesting people from all different parts of industry. So maybe they're more in traditional marketing, maybe they're sitting somewhere a little bit different. And so we have a number of those with folks, which are pretty exciting. And we have a new one coming out soon with a producer who is focused on women's sports and media. So that'll be pretty exciting. We get into leagues you maybe have never heard of, but you will be soon, to the WNBA, and to even the financials of how lucrative those women's leagues have become over the past couple of years. So pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, and we were using AI. I mean, we have touched on AI a couple times on the podcast. I actually was in need of help from AI during the episode on
speaking
Chiquita.
of bananas, shopping for bananas.
There was so many horrifying stories in the annals of Chiquita's history that I didn't feel like we could just sort of expose our audience to them unadulterated. So I asked AI to help me tell those stories in some various ways that made them a little more palatable. So I had AI write one of the stories that was about a massacre, but in the style of Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And so it was a pretty fun partnership. And then we also did the story of Chiquita's involvement with the Colombian rebels during the Colombian Civil War in the style of Dr. Seuss that Topher read just beautifully. It was just amazing.
You don't turn to me to read something with gravitas. Let's just put it that
way. Well, people can obviously find these for you. And then also one more time, where can they find bot-friendly branding? I know you have white paper, and we want to be able to direct people there.
Yeah, so both of these are indexable on our website, weareterritorial.com. As you scroll down the website, you'll see a bug to click onto bot-friendly branding. It takes you over to a microsite where you can download the white paper. You can check out the webinar that we did. We've got a recording there. And then there's also some other links. We have been messing around in the bot world for a while. We actually have our own little ChatGPT instance we call Terry, the Territorial bot. And Terry's journey through the past year of development in generative and conversational AI is fascinating, because when we started it, Terry would get really unhinged. Like Terry would just go wild, and it's fascinating to see how different Terry is now than Terry was before.
Yeah.
So check out those. Those are on that as
Terry
well.
wants to be like an equity partner at this point. Right?
But Terry also wants to like go on acid trips. Like Terry's done some wild stuff.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
Don't invite Terry to your party if you don't want some stuff broken. And then if you, on our website as well, weareterritorial.com, you can go down and check out our podcast. It is Strange Coordinates. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. As Aidan mentioned, we're on YouTube as well. And it's just a real hoot. That whole thing started because, as I'm sure a lot of people can relate to, thought leadership can feel kind of gnarly and like impostery and a little blustery sometimes. And we just kind of looked each other in the face and we're like, we'd been trying for years to get some like, what are we gonna say to the world that like actually matters? And we're like, you know what? Let's, instead of worrying about like out LinkedIning the LinkedIning people, how about we just like focus on the parts of our job that we love? So when Aidan talked through the core components of the podcast, it's about talking about the crazy stories behind brands that we're super excited about, and it's about talking to people who we think are fascinating. And so yeah, it's a fun time, and we hope others find it as engaging as we do.
Yeah,
excellent. All right, well, thank you everyone for talking. Robert, Topher, Aidan, it's been an absolute pleasure. And again, bot friendly branding is quite interesting, so certainly go out and learn more about it. Again, thank you. This has been another episode of Indie Thinking. Kyle O'Brien, Robert, Aidan, Topher, thank you so much for being a part of it, and we will talk soon. Don't leave, you guys. I'm just going to end the stream right now.
Awesome.
Thanks
so
everyone.
much, Kyle.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cal.